And welcome back to another episode of Over the Glass. I am your host, Jay. And today we have some lovely guests in the building. I have the two hosts from the Ice is Slippery podcast. And as much as I think I can do your podcast justice with introducing it, I think I'll let you guys kind of go about introducing your podcast to the world.
That sounds good. My name is Kate.
My name is Fred.
And our podcast is called Ice is Slippery. We call ourselves an unserious hockey podcast brought to you by 1.5 hockey fans. I'm the hockey fan.
I am half the hockey fan. Some weeks more, some weeks less.
Right. It kind of depends.
Yep.
I'm always consistently the biggest hockey fan of the duo. He and I are married. We've been married a long time. We've been together about 20 years. I have been into hockey about 10 of those years, got really into it within the last 5 years. And he got kind of tired of not seeing me during hockey season. So he started watching just to spend some time with me. And now he has to do a podcast with me. So that's marriage, everybody.
Pretty much.
So I did hear on your first episode that it was actually Fred's idea to start this podcast. So can you tell me a little more about how that kind of came about?
Yeah, well, if you can imagine our podcast, but without us like recording it, like that was our home life. Like it's pretty much the conversations we have or have been having. And it just seemed like she needed an outlet, maybe. That was other than me, because I only care so much about hockey. Like I do like it. I am invested in it now, but it's not my thing. It's her thing. And it just we like to do stuff. I like to do new and fun things. So it just seemed like we should give it a try.
Well, he also thought it was important for there to be more women voices in the hockey
That's
podcast
true.
community, which I thought was really a cool perspective for him to have. And you know, I also maybe think on some level it was him trying to maybe limit me to maybe talking about hockey at him once a week instead of 7 days a week. It didn't really work out that way, but you know, at least it's maybe a little more focused, I guess.
Well, we appreciate you uplifting voices, Fred. I mean, I guess like you, Kate, I'm sure you can relate with just being able to just talk forever about hockey. And that's kind of what I ended up doing prior to the podcast. I talk a lot of hockey. And finally, I guess I'm putting it to good use or something. I don't know.
Slippery slope, I feel like. You know, you start with one team and then it just, you know, we were talking about that because 2 Flyers players got traded and Fred follows the Flyers. Now he's like, oh, well, now I'm going to be watching the Flames. And he's starting to see how it starts as one team and then it's just a whole snowball effect.
Yeah, and then as you dive more into it, my journey was essentially ended up surrounding myself with more and more hockey fans, and then from there they influence you to follow other aspects of the game, and they're, you know, just like the avalanche effect of it. So I think if it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't be as diehard or as obsessed as some folks have coined my personality within this sport to be. But I think it's one of the nice things about starting this podcast is getting to chat with lovely folks like you and find ourselves in areas where we're much closer now with the Sharks than we used to be as just fans in general coming in and watching the game. We've been able to interact with them more. And, you know, just in general, I'm sure you guys can relate that, like you mentioned earlier, just having, you know, more women in this space. Like there's folks that may not follow the Sharks, but they follow our podcast because we're queer voices. We just like to have fun. And there's just the representation that you don't see with so many other podcasts that are saturating this space that we're in. So that's another wonderful thing that we like to do. We like to bring on guests that are kind of in that same sort of journey with us and just have a chat and expand everybody's ability to find like these podcasts that resonate so well with them. And I did want to kind of bring up how I came about finding out about you guys' podcast. So I'm trying to find I was trying to find the tweet that the exchange that we had, but maybe you can refresh my memory a little bit about the tweet that you commented on, and I just happened to find it in passing.
I vaguely remember it. It was during my very, very brief foray on Twitter before I was like, this is not for me. I can't do this.
Right.
There was some guy made some tweet about like gay people not belonging in hockey, or like get gay people out of hockey. Something, just, it was because of some Pride night, I think. And I just made some reply about how I'm bisexual. I've been married to a guy for over, for 20 years. Like, I basically pass as straight, I guess. Like, I mostly, I'm not like sort of as much part of the community, I guess, because I am married to a man and, I have a kid. And I think a lot of people just assume I'm a straight woman, and that's that. But I have found that the hockey community is so great about, like, there is such a great, like, queer hockey sort of culture, and it's like so important, and it's like such a huge thing. And I don't know, I just like, you can't gatekeep it. Sorry, you can't gatekeep it. It's like, it belongs to everybody. It belongs to like me and Fred and you, and it belongs to all of us. So I don't know. It was just a very silly thing. It did make me feel happy that this guy got ratioed pretty hard. So, and I think it's pretty telling that we can't like remember this guy's name or what exactly he tweeted. We just remember that it brought us together.
So I did actually finally find it on my end. And for the most part, you kind of summarized it pretty much to the T, as most things happen in the social space. Somebody whose opinion is just outdated comes in. This was the post that the Sharks made in relation to the artist who did the pride design for the Sharks this year. And it's such a lovely story. And that's what's so exhausting about these folks who come in here. Everyone's just celebrating love and, inclusion. And someone decides to come in here and says, stop, quote unquote, shoving it down our throats and, whatever. And so I did see a number of these quote retweets were showing up on the feed, and I did see there were a lot of folks that were hitting back, and I tend to stay away from, for mental health purposes. I try not to dive down the rabbit hole of what's happening here, but I just felt in this moment that I wanted to see all, the support. And that's kind of where I believe I saw your reply, and I went, wait, hang on. There's another podcast with a bisexual woman, who's hosting. Like, I have to reach out. I have to get I have to learn more about this podcast. So in a nutshell, that's kind of how we found ourselves here. And I am so excited to talk about you guys's connection with the Stars and the Flyers. So let's just kind of start there. How did you come about to these fandoms? My story is very basic and lame. I just in the area, and I came across the Sharks game, and the rest is history from there. But correct me if I'm wrong, Kate, you are originally from Florida?
I was actually born in Texas, but I only lived there since I was 4, but I spent most of my life in Florida. So really mostly Floridian. And then Fred is from the New England area originally. And hockey, really, Florida, it's more of a football area. So where I grew up, it was way more like college football was a thing. I was never really into sports. I have a very bad attention span. I'm part of the, epidemic of women who were diagnosed with ADHD in our 40s. Like, it's like, oh, that's why I haven't been able to pay attention to anything my entire life. Hockey is the one sport that's ever been able to engage me and keep my attention. I got into it a little over 10 years ago. I tripped over a stool in the kitchen and hit my head on the counter and gave myself a concussion. And while I was recovering, and it was pretty bad. I was really messed up. I was just reading about concussion recovery, and I was reading about hockey players, and it just blew my mind. I was like, I didn't even lose consciousness and I can barely function. And these guys like get concussions and just go back out on the ice. And I just thought it was super interesting. And I started watching games and following a few teams, and I just kind of really gravitated towards the Dallas Stars and started following them. So they just kind of became my team. And like I said, I was kind of pretty casually into them. I didn't always have sort of, subscriptions or whatever. So I didn't always watch them all the time. But during the COVID era, we're all locked down. We were extra locked down here. And so I kind of got back into it during the bubble playoffs and got on Reddit and was commenting in the game threads there. And it was just nice to feel connected with people again and to have a community. And the Dallas Stars subreddit I found is so fantastic. They're just like a really great group of people. If not, I think one of the bigger hockey subreddits. For pretty chill group, very welcoming, very inclusive. So I just felt very welcomed there right away, even as somebody who at that point, again, casual hockey fan, I just liked watching it. I didn't really know it very well, but that's really where I started getting pretty super hardcore into it, I would say.
Yeah.
And then last year, I decided to do like a hockey fantasy team, just again, so I could learn more. And I ended up with a couple of Flyers players on my team, including Travis Konecny. And I started watching some Flyers games just to check them out. And I immediately fell in love with Travis Konecny. He is everything I love in a hockey player. Like, he's a little rat man, which is my favorite kind of hockey player. And he's so skilled and he's just fun to watch. So I started watching the Flyers a lot. And then Fred started watching John Tortorella interviews.
Right.
And so Fred has now decided to adopt a hockey team, and it's not the Stars. Fred is a Flyers fan, and I think it's largely Tortorella, but he also just really enjoys watching the Flyers.
Yep, that's true.
Yep.
Yep. My journey to hockey is just I'm along for the ride.
Pretty much.
Yep. I grew up in New England, played pond hockey here and there, but just it's a new thing for me. But yeah, following the Flyers because of Torts, basically, and everybody you follow. That's pretty much my story.
And I kind of have that effect on people. Fred's mom lived with us for a while, and she got into hockey while she was here. It's I kind of Stockholm syndrome everybody into it after a while.
It's hard not.
I'm very enthusiastic. I'm a proselytizer for hockey.
I can relate so much. Like I try to pull back because I've found myself in situations where like hockey is like my sleeper cell word. Like you could be some random on the street, but if you ask me a hockey question, I will realize an hour into it, like, oh, did I answer your question? Did you want to know all that? And now I catch myself. Now I'm like, just answer the question first and then wait and let them ask you more if they want to. If they don't, I think the conversation is done, because I do find myself in situations where I get really excited and I just want to talk hockey. And I mean, the podcast has been helpful for that, because that's what I do for an hour out of my Sunday. But yeah, like it's just great to meet other folks that you can do that with, and then maybe you can as I say, kind of save other people from your obsession.
Right. Exactly.
But Fred, I do have a friend that you could probably be BFFs with, because he's a major Torts fan.
Oh, nice.
There's a running joke in our group chat during the time when the Sharks were going through coach roulette. right before the rebuild. I don't know where Torts was in that time frame, but anytime there was maybe some hinting that maybe he was going to get fired or something like that, my friend's like rubbing his hands together. Like, and as much as I am a fan of just watching him just erupt on the bench and those like much older times when he would do even crazier things like try to jump over the glass and stuff like that, like it's fun to see, but personally I wouldn't want him in the Sharks locker room. I don't think we need those vibes there. I think we've had some very good vibes over the last season, but it's definitely something to see for sure.
I feel like he fits in very well in Philly. Like he has very Philly vibes.
Yeah, and he's obviously I only know him for like the last 2 years. He's chilled out a lot, I think.
Right.
You've definitely got him during his like more retirement era years.
Yeah.
I would dive down the rabbit hole of like Tort
We've seen
moments.
some clips of like him try to fight other coaches and stuff, and we think he probably would not have been as into that.
I don't know if that guy would have resonated with me the way the new one does.
Fred's a Buddhist. He's kind of a pacifist. I don't think he would have been into that, but he enjoys like current, present day Tortorella.
So speaking of the Stars and the Flyers, let's just kind of dive into one of the biggest news this on Saturday was the trade between the Stars and the Sharks for Granlund and Cody Ceci for a 2025 first round pick and then a 2025 conditional third round pick. The condition being the Stars must make the Stanley Cup final for the Sharks to get the third round in that year. And then if you guys don't, then it reverts to the fourth round pick. So I'll start out with my initial reaction to it. It's no secret. It was put out already that Mike Grier had not had any discussions with our pending UFAs. That's not surprising. We're essentially, since he took the helm, he's overhauled all of our long no movement clause contracts the best that he could. I mean, Erik Karlsson asked for a trade and he had a no movement. We signed him for 8 years when we got him. Tomas Hertl as well. He went over to Vegas. So we're really in a situation where we want nice short contracts, the ability to have our young guys get the time, the ice time, and mix them in with the veterans, but we're not in any situation where we're trying to retain talent in the age range that Granlund and Cody Ceci are in. We did see Blackwood get traded off to the Colorado Avalanche recently. He essentially played his way out of a contract. He was one of those guys, just like a Granlund. Granlund came out and it'd been said that he was interested in coming back with the Sharks. So that was a conversation. But essentially, Mike Grier said there were like a little less than half the league had been calling and inquiring about these players. And he had a certain price that he was putting up there, and the Stars essentially met that, and he felt that that was the best move to move on from these guys and get those picks and continue to build up for the future. So these guys, not surprising that they moved on, but it is gonna be it's gonna be interesting when the Sharks and the Stars play on Saturday, because Granlund was like on our first line, our first power play. The first year that we had him, it was kind of like, all right, wait and see. I believe he was originally coming from Pittsburgh. I saw this recently, and I think that's most correct. Either way, he was just the team decided move on from him and whatever. And a lot of those types of guys are the ones that are coming over to the Sharks, whether they've exhausted their time at another team, their contracts are too huge that they just don't feel like it makes sense for the team to keep them around anymore. And we're in the business of turning them around, giving them all the time and space to work on themselves, and then we get assets in return. And it looks like Granlund improved so much to the point where we were able to, I feel, is the bigger picture in this trade, that the first round pick was largely Granlund, and perhaps Ceci was kind of in there to balance out the package and get another pick in return. So that's kind of how I feel. Like, it's going to suck to see him leave because we are definitely going to have a huge deficit in our offense. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out on Saturday. But for you guys, I had some thoughts, but since you guys follow the Stars more closely, I'm interested to hear how you feel Granlund is going to kind of play into your lineup and benefit you guys.
Well, I'm excited to hear your thoughts more too, because I don't know Granlund very well. I think overall this is a good move. I'm happy about it. We are in not the best spot right now. We've got Tyler Seguin's out for the rest of the season. He had hip surgery. May be back for playoffs. They seem hopeful, but I'm not sure. You know, hip surgery is tough, and he's been through it before. We also now are really, really tough on defense. We have lost Nils Lundqvist for the rest of the season. He had a shoulder injury that needed surgery, and none of us really knew about that. We just thought he was being healthy scratched, and then it was like, oh no, he's actually been on IR retro. He's had surgery. He's done for the season. And then Miro Heiskanen got injured earlier this week in a game against Vegas. Which we'll talk about probably more on our podcast, because I have lots of thoughts and opinions about that. So we definitely needed more defense. Our defense has not been the solidest this year. You know, we had Chris Tanev. We got him last year as a rental. We really wanted to keep him, but we couldn't offer him the time and money that he wanted. And so we lost him to Toronto. Jim Nill made what I think is a very rare misstep by signing Matt Dumba in the offseason. He has not been very helpful for us. So I think Cody Ceci will be helpful for us, and that he's going to be somebody who's going to be sort of in our bottom, you know, on defense. And we've got Leon Bichel up right now from the AHL, who's great. And I think he's going to be probably playing more in the top on our defense. So we'll be able to get to see him do that more. And I think Granlund, what he's going to do is really kind of round out more of like that middle forward role, kind of where Tyler Seguin was. I think if I remember correctly, Granlund used to play for the Preds when Matt Duchene was there. So they might have some history together, which would be good, because poor Matt Duchene has been abandoned by Tyler Seguin and Mason Marchment. You know, I call them the throuple line because they have like this insane chemistry together. Although we just found out today that Mason Marchment is being taken off of IR. So I don't know if he'll be back for today's game, but he is coming back, which is very exciting for Stars fans. So overall, I did get very nervous when we first started hearing about this trade yesterday, because we had a couple of Sharks fans pop over to the subreddit and go, ooh, does this mean we're going to maybe get Bichel or Stankoven? And I was like, you can have Leon Bichel over my dead body. Like, that's not happening. So to not lose any personnel, especially if our little baby stars, because, you know, we have great development and we're very attached to our little baby stars. I think a first round pick was worth it, you know, with the drafts this year being what it is. We still are doing pretty well with our depth, and I think the conditional pick is fine too. I think, yeah, definitely need another forward. I think Ceci, from what I know about him, I mostly am familiar with him from our series against the Oilers last year in the playoffs, which he did not necessarily put himself the greatest, but anything's going to be an improvement over Dumba. I think Dumba's a lovely person. Like, please don't get me wrong. I think he's a very nice man. I just don't think he's like the right person for the Stars.
He just doesn't need to be out on the ice all the
He
time.
just doesn't need to be on the ice all the time, and that's okay. Like, so anyway, so that's kind of where I'm at with it. I think it seems like a pretty mutually beneficial trade, because I know with the Sharks, you know, it's all about sort of the future and the picks for you guys. So I think it seems like kind of a win-win. I have seen some Sharks fans saying, well, too, maybe Granlund will just be a rental and maybe he'll come back and sign with us next year. So, but I did see Jim Nill say that he does see that with both of these, that this is not necessarily a rental situation with him. He is looking at the long term for both of them, which again, maybe cool, maybe not cool. I still am side-eyeing Jim Nill over the Matt Dumba situation. So, and those are all my thoughts. Would you like to add anything?
I don't have any thoughts on it. No,
I don't think so.
I'm just along for the ride with when it gets into this kind of detail.
When he gets it, when it's like trades and business and contracts and stuff, he's like, please do not perceive me.
Yeah, I was following Dumba a lot when he was with the Wild. So I'm Filipino, so I've got the Filipino hockey players on my radar. Huge fan of Dumba. I did see he's not doing so hot with you guys, and that's unfortunate, but you know, it's great to have him you know, around, but maybe not necessarily on the ice.
I mean, he and Robo together were like the first Filipino players to combine on a point this season, which I think is great. I really love a lot of like the social justice work he's done. I think he's like a great person. I just think that the way our play is, he's not like adding much.
He hasn't really settled into the system.
He has, exactly.
When I watch Dumba now, it's oh nice, oh no, oh, it's like just the back and forth of great, no, not that, great. No. So
yeah, you notice him. Sometimes he does something great, and then sometimes he does something terrible. It's kind of, there's no in between, it seems like.
Well, as far as Ceci goes, I'll say that he's serviceable. It's hard to, you know, be very objective about a player in regards to defense when the team that he's on, that you're watching, is not doing so great with defense as a whole. So, you know, while he is a defenseman and he's the last line of defense before it gets to the goaltender, defense is a team-wide effort. And if there's a breakdown across the board, are we really saying this is the defender's fault each time? I mean, this is a team sport. But I will say that, I mean, we had a lot of juggling of our lineup in general with injuries and just finding chemistry. But Ceci was most recently playing, you know, with our top defender and Jake Wallman, and he also saw some PK time. So if you guys are needing, as far as like, if you find him the right pairing, I think he will, you know, be a hard worker and do what he needs to do. But will he necessarily be, you know, in terms of what you gave up for him? I think we're just, I feel like the bigger piece of the pie for this trade was essentially Granlund. So Ceci is just kind of in the mix for that. And you kind of like, all right, that's fair. This trade makes sense for the both of us. In terms of Granlund, so on the outside looking in, I noticed that, and maybe it's just me checking in every now and then and not seeing the whole picture, but in previous seasons when Pavelski was on the top line with Robertson and Roubaix Hintz, you guys were killer, especially on the power play. One season for fantasy, I had Pavelski and I was loving it. This year, I've seen a decline in Robertson's production. I've seen that Hintz isn't really, you know, on the board quite as much. You guys have kind of been juggling between who's in your power play units and things like that. So You did mention you could see Granlund on your second line, but could you potentially, I don't know how well you guys' first line is going right now, but he plays on the right side as well. So you guys have Robertson and Hintz, and is like Wyatt Johnson doing pretty well with them, and or is that someone that you're kind of slotting in there?
Lately, yeah, it's been tricky again because there have been so many people in and out of the top line. Because again, with that second line with Marchment and Sagan out, it's just people have been moving all around. Johnston was originally kind of supposed to be on the top line with Rope and Robertson, and there were reasons why that didn't happen at first. And then Rope was out for a while, I think, with an injury. And then when he came back, they brought him back on the third line. It's been a lot of musical chairs, a lot of line juggling for sure. I will say the top line has been great chemistry in the Vegas game earlier this week. Wyatt had a hattie, all assists off of Rope Hintz. So that was great. There was a shorthanded one, an even strength one, and an OT game winner. So that was very cool. So I think, and really, I mean, Robo has woken up, I would say, the last month.
He has. Yeah.
Yeah.
2025, he's yeah. I have a lot of issues with him, which if you listen to our podcast, you'll know.
You
but
want to like him.
I want to like him, and he makes it real hard for me. But he's come alive.
He's been really good.
He keeps scoring goals and getting points.
And Rope's been looking very much like his old self as well. So I've been very critical about our power play on the podcast. But the last month we've made some huge strides. We have been a lot better. I actually said during the last game something like, if we score on this next power play, I'm going to have to stop complaining about the power play so much. And then we scored on the last power play. I believe it was Robo. And I was like, well, great. I guess I'm going to have to be a little nicer. So no, I mean, I think power play is getting a little bit better. I still think there's work to be done there. So if Granlund is good with the power play, by all means, please help us. Great idea. I mean, Miro Heiskanen has been on our top power play line, and he has not actually been looking that great there. So him being out, we put Harley up there, and I think he's been doing really well. So, I think there's all kinds of things to be done. And then also just really quickly, going back to the Ceci thing, another one of our defense pickups we did in the off season was Ilya Lyubushkin, who a lot of people were like, oh, he's terrible, you're going to hate him. Like Leafs fans were like, no, he's the worst. He's been fantastic for us. Our penalty kill's one of the best, if not the best in the league. And he's been a big part of that, him and Essa Lindell. So sometimes players that don't work in one particular system do work in another system, and it comes down to chemistry. So maybe Ceci will be better with us. I don't know. I hope so. It'll be nice. Let's see.
Yeah, I mean, the whole different systems and, the whole classic saying of change of scenery type of thing. I mean, Ceci was having a fairly decent season with us, give all things considered and stuff. So if anything, he's had a pretty decent season with a new team. And so he's getting traded he's going from 32nd in the league up to, looking to go all the way. And I can imagine that will boost a player's emotional state like even more. So maybe he also gets another boost of energy and work ethic with the Stars Club. And as much as we love both of them here with the Sharks, it's just part of the process. We're in that situation now where you have to see a lot of these players go year after year. And so we wish them well. And also it's beneficial for us if you guys get to the finals. So
exactly. So I always kind of say that I feel like the Sharks and the Stars we're kind of very kindred spirits now, because you all very graciously let us take stewardship over Joe Pavelski for the last few years. You have Ty Delandria, who was, I saw him referred to once as our emotional support healthy scratch on the Stars, which was very true. He was so beloved in the locker room. I mean, he's literally on Jake Ottinger's helmet. Like, Jake Ottinger used to refer to him as his son. Like, he was so loved. So there's been so much crossover with the personnel. So I think that, I've started watching more Sharks games to see Delandria, and just because, you guys have so much exciting young talent over there. And I know I've seen some Sharks fans coming over to check us out too. So it's nice to be able to have that sort of little crossover.
Yeah, and Pavelski left a big hole in Dallas.
Oh, yeah. Right? It's, I mean, not just on the score sheet, but obviously emotionally as well. I mean, yeah. I think the room's been off. So they, I mean, Logan Stankoven had his long scoring drought, and then Joe called him to check on him and see how he was doing. And then he finally broke and scored for the first time in 25 games. So, I mean, Joe clearly has the magic going for us.
Yep.
So we're going to take a moment to talk about our sponsors. So we'll be back right after this.
This ain't the little itty bitty teeny tiny bowl. This is Super Bowl 59. Get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 59. Scoring touchdowns is key to hoisting the Vince Lombardi Trophy, and you have a shot to score big by betting on them at DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. New DraftKings customers can bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. New customers only. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
And we're back. So we do have another team that we should talk about, because I have some interest in knowing how you guys feel about the situation that occurred with your young prospect and John Tortorella recently. Is that just another day on the bench, or is that anything to be worrisome about, or is just Torts being Torts, move along?
The Torts Michkov little shouting match. I think a lot's been made out of it. Michkov is a little bit of a hothead. We've seen him getting some rumbles on the ice this year already. Yeah. We saw, a wonderful moment this year where he got kicked out of a game and stopped to sign a water bottle for a fan. He's certainly a very spicy boy. And, I honestly think that Tortorella really likes and appreciates Michkov. And I think he is, yes, kind of tough on him sometimes. But if you watch as much Torts press as we do, because of course, Fred loves Torts.
Yep.
Torts just has spoken so highly of Mich and has really spoken so much about how Michkov is just 19. He is a kid. He says he's a kid. He doesn't need to have all of this pressure on him to be the savior of the franchise and things like that. And he is trying to make it very clear that he is trying to teach him to do the right stuff, like from the get-go. And he's not trying to be like, oh, hey, you're the hope of the future, go, like it's on you. He's saying, let's get the foundations right. Is Torts maybe emotional? Yes, he is, absolutely. But I think he yelled. I think Mich yelled back, and then I think that was it. I think they probably have both moved on.
Yeah, and I mean the way Torts described it too, it was kind of like from the earlier benching where it was a discipline kind of issue, and kind of Michkov maybe was outspoken and not being a professional and not taking accountability or something, and I don't know.
It wasn't so much about the puck turnover; it was about Torts being like, "Hey, don't do that," and then Meech getting in his face.
Yeah, and I during that game I was bummed. I was like, what was it? Was like 5-0. It was they were getting like beat bad. I was like, get him out there, but I guess whatever happened on the bench, I don't know. And yeah, I thought it was a bummer, but after Torts explained it, I was like, oh, okay, it's one of those learning opportunities, I guess. But I don't know.
Yeah.
And that. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I get why fans get frustrated because they do want to see him, but it's important to remember too that he's coming over from the KHL where the ice size is different, the seasons are shorter. He's tired. He's a young guy. He's tired. He's not used to skating like this. So that's part of it too. And Torts has said from the get-go he wasn't necessarily planning on him playing all 82 because it is a grueling season.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we have Will Smith, and he was also getting like maintenance days or whatever early in the season. Since after, I think after the 25 game mark or something like that, we really haven't seen him take a maintenance day in the press box. But it doesn't seem out of the ordinary to kind of regulate the games that your young guys, just him coming from the KHL, our college kids coming from, they played what, like 30 some games during their NCAA careers, and now you're thrusting them into an 82 season game with like a ton of travel. I mean, I don't follow the NCAA that closely, but I'd imagine they're not doing nearly as much travel. Granted, they're also doing school on the side, so that's a whole nother stressful aspect of their life. But I'd imagine at the NHL level, that being, pro level hockey, your career, things like that, there's a far more demanding environment than where they were just a season ago. So just from the outside looking in terms of benching a player to, they do something that, like is a big mistake on the ice. I mean, I'm not saying necessarily that it's one size fits all, but it doesn't seem like it's a bad thing. And Smith's had some of those situations as well with Warsawski. He's benched him for like a whole period after he's been going through some transitional growing pains, which I didn't really like early on in the season, where it felt like Celebrini and Smith were kind of being like, compared to one another. It's like, that's comparing apples to oranges. Celebrini has this whole other expectation of being the first overall pick. We can see it in relation to if we compare like with the Blackhawks and Bedard and that whole situation. And I just feel upset for any, we could see, even go back to like how the Oilers have just had so many first overall picks, and just the demand at that level with the Canadian fan base, and just eat, live, breathe hockey out there. Like, it's brutal. Like, the media will just ask the most brutal in your face questions. And I mean, I'm just in those situations, I'm kind of thankful that San Jose is not really in that sort of like the Warriors and the 49ers over here. Like, they get way more attention than our little Sharkies over here, which I think is kind of nice for players like that come over and they're in the latter half of their careers and whatever, but they've still got more in the tank, and they're like, yeah, San Jose looks chill. I don't mind playing there for a couple of seasons and then maybe going for the cup after that. But yeah, I don't really follow the Flyers all that closely, and just kind of seeing this sort of stuff kind of come about. And so in addition to Michkov, like, I guess one of the questions that I have is like what level of pressure is he kind of experiencing with the Flyers? Because it's my understanding that the Flyers were they kind of had their pieces in place like for a while, and then the situation with Carter Hart kind of came about. And so now you kind of have the situation in goal where you're trying to figure out all that. And so I guess I'm just kind of curious, where are you guys in your timeline of, are you expected to make the playoffs? And is like, I guess Michkov sort of getting that pressure of being the person, unfortunately, with all the other things that came about, is he getting that pressure to be that guy?
I would say we're still very much considered to be in a rebuild. And there's some debate amongst the fans about how well this rebuild is going, like whether the front office has committed to it enough, because there hadn't been so many sort of trades or, committing to the tank or what have you. The thing with Michkov is nobody thought we were going to be seeing him for at least like another 2 seasons, probably. Danny Briere has apparently like some sort of international diplomacy wizard, because we got the goaltender Fedotov over. He, had to do mandatory military service and was literally like in a tank in Siberia last year, and Danny Briere got him over. And then Michkov came over, fully at least a year, maybe 2 earlier than anticipated. So the fact that we have, him earlier than planned, it's just gravy, really. Basically, he's got all of this time now to sort of get this ice time while we're still putting the pieces together. I think we're still kind of in the playoff picture right now. I don't know if we'll get there or not. I don't know that
Probably not.
Yeah. I don't know that the organization strongly has a preference one way or another. I think there are a lot of the fans who would like us to not make the playoffs so we get a better draft pick. I think the organization wouldn't mind if we got to the playoffs, because a lot of the guys haven't had much, if any, playoff experience, and they think that would be beneficial, at the very least. There are definitely some people who I think are planned to be long-term pieces of the team. Travis Konechny,
Yep.
Owen Tippett,
Michkov,
obviously.
Yep.
And then there are other players who are sort of like veteran players who have been in the room for a long time, who they really like, but I think are willing to let go for the right price. I think it's just a very big transitional phase right now. And I think John Tortorella is kind of part of that. I think the reason he's there is because he's kind of known for getting players into like shape for, what's next for that sort of phase in their career. I think especially with like Travis Konechny, he's been working really closely with Travis Konechny on kind of shaping him, not just as a player, but in sort of like a leadership role. And so yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting time for the Flyers. I'm actually really happy Fred picks them for his team. I was following them pretty closely anyway, but they're exciting to watch. Like, they're still very inconsistent, but they just have these like flashes of brilliance. And I don't know, they're like a passionate group. The room's really tight. They fight for each other.
Yep.
I don't know, they're fun to watch. They're entertaining. I will give them that.
And one of the things I like about them, I said this, I think this week, is, I'm never expecting them to win. And when they do, it's great. But like, I'm going into a game with real low expectations. Like, it could just be a terrible experience, but it's more fun for me not having those expectations or desires for them to win. Just thinking, they're probably going to lose this one. And then they win, bonus.
Whereas as a Stars fan, I have very high expectations. And when they don't perform perfectly, I'm very disappointed. It's like the Stars are like the gifted children, and I'm like the high maintenance mother. And it's a problem that I'm having to work on with myself.
Fred, you'd fit right into Sharks territory. That is the vibe I come into every game with. And I'm like, I just want everyone to have fun.
Yes.
Like, there was a game, the back-to-back games that we had with the Predators where the Sharks, it was night and day between the two. I mean, the Sharks went up by a ton of goals, and then they landslide at the end versus they started the landslide early, and then they almost got it, almost got us a potential point. So, and they're throughout the season, and I say all feelings are valid, of course, as much as I want this team to be winning, because it's not fun to watch your team lose. Like, it just kind of takes the sails out of you. Of course you want them to win, but given the situation that the Sharks are in, the reality is we're gonna lose more than we're gonna win. And when you have games like the Predators where you're scoring a ton of goals, we're probably not going to be doing that for the rest of the season, but hey, but that's exciting. And the reaction after the game when we don't win, I get it. People are upset. Like, wow, we were up by a gajillion goals and then we just went, floop, it's gone. Yeah, it's not fun to see that, but I guess glass half full, we did not see a first period like that last season. So it while it's not, we're ready to see the playoffs next season, it's nice to kind of step away from the big picture and see the little improvements. And that's kind of how I've been watching hockey these days for the Sharks. So I can empathize with other fan bases that are kind of in that sort of whatever phase in their rebuild, that you go in and you're just like, I just hope I see an exciting game. I want to be surprised. There's definitely been moments where I'm just like, I didn't know that they could do that. That's cool. That's cool to be surprised. You're in this for, the journey of it. And if you're not, I'm not saying that you're any less of a hockey fan. There's certainly coworkers of mine that are into hockey that are kind of taking a step away from it because it's not as fun for them, that the team isn't as competitive. And I get it. But I am excited. I'm watching it from a different lens now that I have during our glory years of always making the playoffs and things like that. You see it through a different lens now, where we get to watch Celebrini come up and do these amazing things. Did I think that he was going to be this effective in his first season? No. So that in itself is so exciting to see. It's also so exciting to see Smith, while he struggled to acclimate in the beginning, we had to spend a little more time finding the right line for him, the right role. He started out with center, then they moved him to the wing, things like that. Now he's starting to kind of figure it out, and that's really exciting to see. So all that to say, Fred, hey, if you ever want to come hang out with some Sharks fans for a game, well, I mean, you guys are going to see the Stars Sharks game on Saturday. So yeah, by relation to you guys following the other team, you'll get to see how much we have in common with the Flyers.
To be real, he'll probably be cheering for the Sharks.
I mean,
he loves an underdog.
I do, and yeah, that, I mean, I think this is over the years, like, I just want to see a good game and everyone have fun is kind of my vibe, and that doesn't always work out when we're watching games together, because I'll be like, did you see what they did to Dallas? Oh my God, they're destroying them. And
I'm like, whose side are you on? No, I mean, it's just kind of how he is in general, though. It's like, I'm a super competitive person. We're not like a big board game family, because I take things very seriously. And he's just like, can we just all have a good time and just like relax? And I'm like, no, we cannot. And we have a teenager, and she definitely takes after me. So poor guy, who's just trying to live his life, and he's surrounded by hyper competitive people who are very like perfectionist personalities.
Yeah, and I've never been a sports person. Like, I got a bad taste in my mouth for sports in high school, and have never really followed anything.
It's true.
So, other than F1 for like 5 years, but yeah. So I don't know, this attitude of just see what they do, and I hope they win, but they're probably not going to. I don't know. It's relaxing for me. I enjoy the games more that way. So
We could all learn to be more like Fred, I think. I mean, I haven't yet, but maybe one day I will. Maybe one day I'll pick something up.
I think a nice healthy balance. I'm enjoying this downtime for other reasons as well with the Sharks, because when they were making the playoffs every year, I mean, when you get into the playoffs, there's no shootout, there's no 3-on-3 overtime, and I can't go to sleep until I know I've tried, and the only thing that ends up happening is I'm checking my phone to see, did they win yet? Did they win yet? And when you're doing that for months after the regular season and you're staying up to watch these overtime, I mean, I don't know what it's like to, well, one being, well, you guys are in the right time zone for the Stars, but for the Flyers,
Yeah.
maybe some days might be a little difficult, but for any East Coast fans that have to watch their team play over in our neck of the woods, like, I am so sorry that you're up at 1 a.m. during the regular season. I can only imagine how brutal it is during the playoffs, so I won't whine too much about it, but it is devastating to get closer and closer to the cup, and you can feel your mental health just draining, getting even more worse. And then I used to, when the Sharks would get knocked out of the playoffs, I used to have to step away from hockey completely. I did not want to talk to anybody about anything related to the sport because I was so devastated. And that's probably not healthy. So we could all learn to be like Fred a little more.
This would be like Fred shirts.
sure.
Yeah, there you go. There's your merch for your podcast. So before we move on from the Flyers, I guess if you guys are going to talk about this on your pod later, we can just brush the surface on it. But I just want to get kind of your vibes on the trade that you guys had recently with Joel Farabee and Morgan Frost. Like, do you feel like that's good for what you got back in return, or are you feeling not so great about the direction of how that trade went?
I think it's a little sad just because Frost and Farabee have been there for so long. I also think it wasn't a huge surprise. Frost in particular, I think, was going to be a UFA maybe after this. I can't remember. Oh no, he was a funding restricted free agent. But yeah, I don't think Frost is probably going to be here after this anyway. And then Farabee, he's always had tons and tons of promise. Last season was actually like a career best season for him, and I was really hoping he'd like knock it out of the park again this year, but it just wasn't like happening for him, and he had a pretty big cap hit. So I think with the way they are in the rebuild, it makes sense for them to sort of make a clean break, move on. I am glad that they're staying together. They're really good friends. So if they're going to be traded, at least they, I saw them refer to Tumblr as a pair of bonded kittens. So at least they have been adopted into a home together, which is always really nice. And I don't know too much about who we got back. I do know that Kuzmenko, he and Michkov played together for a year in the KHL, because Kuzmenko's older, but he came over later to the NHL. So that might be nice for Michkov to have somebody who he's a little more familiar with. And then I don't know too much about Peltier, but I, have heard that he has made a lot of improvements this year, and he's on the younger side. So I don't know. I think maybe this just might be a situation where a clean start's good for everybody. We did actually watch the Flames last night, which is where Frost and Farabee are now. And Frost and Farabee both looked great there. I mean, Frost in particular, he's so happy. Like,
I was going to say, I don't know much about like any of these players or money or all that stuff, but Frost seemed overjoyed to be playing for a Canadian team.
Yeah, just from his pregame interviews to just every time you saw him on the ice, they'd cut to him on the bench. He was just beaming. Like, I've never seen him so happy. I mean, he just looked like he was living his best life. So, you know what? Good for him. I'm happy for him.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that was the first Flames game I think we've watched where we were watching the Flames and not like the Stars or the Flyers, and I enjoyed it, and I felt like they fit in pretty well. They did there's only 3 shots on goal for Frost and nothing for Farabee, but like they didn't seem out of place with like a 48-hour turnaround, and
Yeah, they slotted right in right away. So
I think we're happy for them.
I think we're happy for them. I think from what I can tell from the fans, a lot of the fans are sad to see them go, but kind of understand that that's the business and that's part of it. I mean, Tortorella was talking about that too yesterday, that, you know, it is hard for the room. It's a tight knit room and that it's always challenging, but they're professionals and they'll move on with it. So, but yeah, I think it's just one of those time will tell situations, I guess. You know, I'm probably better versed with the Stars players than I am with the Flyers players.
Yeah, I know. Same, because I looked there when you told me Frost was traded. I was like, which one's he? What's his face look like? Like, you know, I'm a fan, but I guess I'm not that much of a fan. You know?
I mean,
thanks for the memories, maybe. I don't know. All right, so let's move on to some other things around the league. What is you guys' vibe around the Four Nations? We know that this is kind of their touched up version of All Stars, because we know that there are problems with the All Stars in terms of players not really being all that interested in attending, a mismatch of interests in terms of the games played, skill, the skill events and things. It just looked like it was time to move on to something else. And when they announced the Four Nations face off, I was kind of like, okay, so like the Olympics, but not. I have some skepticism around, especially with the announcement that Alex Pietrangelo was going to decide to not play in there because he's nursing some injury and they want to focus on their cup run. And I've seen so does all these other teams, but okay. But then it's Vegas, so probably no one's going to say anything. And the NHL, don't remember his title, but he pretty much said that they were not going to enforce what they did with the All-Stars in terms of disciplining the players. So I'm kind of sitting back and we'll probably watch it because there's going to be nothing but that as hockey for the next couple of weeks after this last week of the regular season for a bit. But I guess, what are you guys' feelings in terms of the Four Nations? Are you excited about it, or is it like, whatever, we'll watch it if we have time or care?
I'm not interested. Is I guess the best way I would say it. You know, I'm interested to see the NHLers actually play in the Olympics again, and this is obviously a great sort of precursor to that. So it will be exciting to see some of these things go on, like some of these players playing together that we haven't seen like that before. It's still, I don't know. It's better than the All-Star game. I will say that. The All-Star game, I never enjoy All-Star weekend. I watch it and I just cringe the entire time because it's just so bad.
I watched the last 2, right?
Yeah, and
oof, rough.
Yeah,
that's rough.
No, I mean, I will literally hide under a blanket. It's really bad, just between the whatever broadcasters they get, and it's just terrible. So I at least feel like this will probably be better than that. So that's something. I'm feeling pretty bad for Team Finland right now because with Miro Heiskanen out and then Jani Hakanpää won't be able to play, they basically have no defense. So that's going to be really rough because I was really pulling for them.
Yep.
Just because, you know, we have a lot of Finnish players in Dallas, so go Finland. Yeah, I don't know. I think it'll be interesting enough. It's worth checking out. I wouldn't say I'm like ecstatic about it, but I'm not like annoyed about it either.
Yeah, I'm kind of neutral.
Yeah, we're pretty neutral, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah,
better than the All-Star games, I think, our general vibe.
100%.
Or the All-Star weekend or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. So
The bar is on the floor. Just make it exciting. Make it halfway exciting. That's just I think I'm gonna essentially kind of watch it for observational purposes. And I mean I want it to be exciting for fans, but I guess we'll kind of see how the players feel about it, because I mean, yeah, it's cool to I'm sure they're looking forward to being amongst their countrymen. Like that's always seems like it's exciting for the guys. But yeah, it does kind of feel like a preliminary for the Olympics type of thing. And ultimately, we know at the end of the day, the guys are trying to get the cup. And a large part of why All Stars, the game portion of it, was kind of very lackluster, is because they don't want to go full out. They don't want to end up doing something that tweaks whatever and then they're out for the rest of the season. So I guess that's what I'm kind of wondering about, like how much are they going to invest in hard hitting, in the forecheck, and all that stuff, because if they're just kind of round robining it for two weeks, I mean, oof, it's going to be rough. But
in hockey, it's not going to be the most exciting thing to watch.
And finally, I wanted to get you guys' opinions on the Utah Hockey Club. Looks like they're kind of coming down to the top 3 names that they have in the mix. We know that Yeti kind of got into some deep waters in terms of the water cooler company and whatever that whole copyright trademark business is. So that's kind of out of the mix. But they have Mammoth, they have Outlaws, and then they have Utah Hockey Club. Out of all those, do you guys feel in a certain direction to what you would hope that this team gets named?
Obviously, Yeti was the best choice.
I mean, I pretty much tapped out once you told me it wasn't going to be Yeti.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I don't care
He was like, oh, no Yeti? All right, whatever.
They can be called whatever they want now because I don't care.
Yeah. I think the Yeti Cooler Company really missed out on an opportunity there. They could have been the sponsor. I mean, it's an ice game. It's a cooler company. Like, come on, guys. Like, marketing, it's not that hard. I guess out of the options that are left, I would go with the Utah Mammoth. I know there's a lot of appeal for the Utah Outlaws out there. It's just too many like vowels like together for me. Some of us have speech impediments. It's a challenge. So yeah, I think the Utah Mammoth is probably the best option. I feel like they have potential to maybe do a cool logo, cool mascot. But yeah, since it's not the Yeti, I just find it really hard to care. Just give me mythical beasts. It's like how I'm still mad that the New York Sirens, the PWHL team, it's just like sirens and not like mythical sea ladies. Like, right. I just want everybody to be mythical creatures. That's all I want. Just all the sports teams need to be mythical beasts.
Yep.
And that's my philosophy.
Yeah. And for me, I only have 2 thoughts on Utah. Like, Yeti was it for me, and they need a new arena because I can't stand watching games from where the camera is and the way everything's set up and their lighting. That's it. That's all my takes on Utah.
But yeah, if they go with the Utah Hockey Club, it's not okay. That's going to be really, really rough. I do appreciate that they gave it an initial different third choice that was like the Utah Wasatch, I think, that was like after a mountain range that had never been on any of the lists before. Nobody had ever heard anything about it. And all the fans were like, no. And they're like, okay, yeah, you're right. Never mind. That was a bad idea. You're right. We'll do the Outlaws instead. That's fine. I did see somebody online say that they should do the Outlaws and then the mascot should be a Yeti and a cowboy hat. And that would be hilarious. So if they do the Outlaws, I will support that. But I'd say out of the options that are remaining, the Mammoth are fine. It's fine. It's fine. Much like Four Nations. It's fine.
Yeah, like I guess the vibe here is okay, we're interested in it, but you're gonna have to kind of bring the interest to us.
Yeah.
We're waiting, make it exciting for us. And then finally, I thought this was pretty cool. Speaking of sponsorships and a missed opportunity for the Yeti company, Shawn White came out with a collab with the team. I don't know how much you guys are interested in snowboarding. I was a big fan of Shawn White back in his day. So exciting to watch these guys and women and non-binary folks taking the half pipe. Back in the day when I was doing a lot of snowboarding, I thought I was the shit, even though I definitely wasn't. I can only turn on heel side. I face plant when I try to go toe side. So, but I was feeling it one season, and I went to a resort that had these half pipes and things you could jump on and things like that. And I did try one that you could kind of just snowboard off of, and I landed right in my butt. But that didn't stop me from thinking I can take a half pipe, right? From far away, you're like, yeah. And then you get within inches of it, you're like, F that, no. And then you turn down the other way, you're like, it is massive. So I can only imagine, when you're watching them during the X Games or the Olympics and whatever, and they're just back and forth jumping like 20 some feet in the air and doing all these flips and whatever. So anyways, I was super excited to watch those back in especially when he was in the mix. And so I just think this is so cool. I don't know if I'm going to buy any merch because I don't know how I feel yet about the Utah Hockey Club, but I think it's super cool and I'm kind of jealous. So have you guys seen any of the merch that came out for Shawn White?
I have not. I'm gonna have to check that out though. I love merch. I mean, half my wardrobe is hockey merch. So
Yep, I love Shawn White. I've watched like the YouTube clips like way back. Yeah.
Redhead solidarity.
Yeah, right. But no, I haven't seen it.
But yeah, there's merch, and then he has this snowboard with yeah, I think this is really cool for their hockey club, and hopefully more stuff like this comes for their club in the future. It was really unfortunate to see that Arizona lost their NHL team, but hey, people in Utah are super excited, and when they were putting all the information out there about season tickets being sold, like that's super cool to see, growing the game and having folks that are as prominent as Shawn White deciding, hey, I want to do stuff with this club. That's cool.
Yeah.
So that's kind of all I had for today to kind of chatter about. But I really just wanted to end with you guys have an opportunity to kind of anything else that you wanted to say about you guys' podcast. Take this time to promote it, to tell folks where they can find you and whatever you guys got planned for the rest of you guys' season.
Sure, absolutely. So like I said before, we call ourselves an unserious hockey podcast. We definitely talk about hockey, but we try to have a kind of a lighthearted, humorous approach to it. It's sports. It's not that serious. Like, I'm really into it, but at the same time, I do like to have fun. We talk about the Stars, we talk about the Flyers, we talk about news from around the hockey world, that's NHL, but sometimes also PWHL or other things that we hear about that we think are cool and that we'd love to spotlight. And we release every week, usually on Sundays. You can find us on Spotify, YouTube, just audio, on YouTube. We don't do video. But yeah, pretty much anywhere you can get a podcast, you'll be able to find us. It's called Ice is Slippery. We got our name from one of the Stars broadcasters, Razor, who is pretty iconic with his calls. Last season in a Stars game, a Buffalo player pretty much just fell down on nothing, and he said, "Whoa, ice is slippery," and it just made me laugh. So ice is slippery, guys. It's also a thing Fred has to say to me all the time because we live in Colorado and I'm very clumsy. And whenever it snows outside, he said, careful, it's slippery out there. So, that's just important words of wisdom to live by. So yeah, we release every week. I'm on social media. We have a Tumblr. I'm on Blue Sky now. And I have an Instagram. I'd probably say I'm most active on Tumblr. And then I'm on Reddit as well. So yeah, you can pretty much find us. Just look for Ice the Slippery. You'll find us. We're out there.
I'm just
Awesome.
along for the ride.
Oh yeah, and he doesn't do he's just pretty much moral support.
Well, I can definitely vouch for you guys. You guys have great chemistry, lots of fun conversations for your episodes. So go check them out, guys. And that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for coming on today to talk about the Stars, the Flyers, other things happening around the league. And it's just cool to have another podcast like you guys in this environment, because we certainly need more of them. So as always, I am your host, Jay, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thank you, guys.